You're watching Screw It on SuppleWine TV. I'm your host, Mike Supple. Hope everybody had a fun 4th of July, and if you traveled, hope it was all safe and economical. Because in this economy, nothing beats the budget airlines. In fact, a couple months coming up here, I'm going to be traveling between Boston and Baltimore. Ended up booking a flight on Southwest that's going to cost me less than a third of what it would have cost to take a train, which is kind of ridiculous. I love budget airlines, so anytime some news pops up, take a little closer look, particularly the press release that Southwest had in this last week about changes to their beverages on board. And they did some customer surveys and said, in accordance to their customers' wishes and desires, they were making some nice upgrades to their onboard beverage selections. Let's take a little closer look and see what they actually did. As you can see, they have 2 new wine selections, both from Coastal Ridge Winery. They have a Chardonnay and they have a Merlot, both listed at $5, and that's for a 187 milliliter bottle, which is a quarter of a bottle. So it gets you a good sized glass out of that, maybe about a glass and a half or so for $5. Now they're touting this as something that's fulfilling their customers' desires, something that will improve the plane experience. I'm more than a little skeptical, and I don't really see why this is reason for a press release. In my opinion, it's kind of like putting out a press release saying we've switched from Bud Light to Coors Light. It's a giant bulk winery, produces a lot of wine that's not poor quality, it's nothing bad, but it's also nothing to write home about. It's nothing you can get excited about, nothing you're going to remember. They're not flawed, but they're not good. Coastal Ridge wineries are made by a giant conglomerate called Bronco Wines. This is the driving force and the mind behind Charles Shaw Wines, better known as 2 Buck Chuck. Fred Franzier, the owner of which is famous for saying many times that no bottle of wine should be more than $10. While I disagree with him on that point, I also think if he's putting all wines on a scale of nothing more than $10, his wine should really not be anything more than a quarter. And there's nothing wrong with them, but they're just not fun, they're not exciting, you're not getting anything out of them. And if you're paying $5 for a quarter of a bottle, Fred, that puts your wine at $20 a bottle. People hawking it out there, it's just not worth it. I don't know whose best interest Southwest had in mind when they're changing to this new Coastal Ridge selection, but it certainly wasn't mine. There's too many wines out there to drink things that just aren't impressive, and for $5 a glass, or if we're talking $20 a bottle, you can get something so much more enjoyable. You don't even have to know anything about wine. For $20 a bottle, you can find something that will have a lot more complexity, a lot more flavor, a lot more everything that will actually blow you away, whether you know anything about wine or not. When it comes to my hard-earned money, I'm not spending $5 on something I'm going to forget about 10 minutes later. It's just not worth it. Kudos to Southwest for trying, because on a long cross-country flight, sometimes a glass of wine really is just the thing that I need to get me through that entire length without going insane. The crying kid behind me, the other kid behind me kicking my seat, the guy in front of me keeps putting his thing all the way back so I can't even eat off of my tray. It drives me insane. But besides that, while they're on the right track, people don't have to be willing to spend first-class tickets to want to enjoy a glass of wine on the flight. It doesn't mean that people that buy economy tickets or bargain tickets like me are going to be duped into spending money on wine that's not worth it. Alright, see you next week.